The following events are based on a true story. Names and details have been altered to protect the identities of those involved, but the horror remains untouched. Watch at your own risk. Story 1. I never thought I'd meet someone like Emily. Not online, at least. We matched on a dating app sometime in early February, and our conversations quickly shifted from casual to deeply personal. She was funny, articulate, and somehow always knew the right thing to say when I had a rough day. Living alone in a condo, on the 32nd floor of a glass and steel high-rise in Chicago, had its moments of isolation, but she filled that silence in a way I didn't realize I needed. After months of texting and late-night calls, we finally made plans to meet in person. A Friday dinner in River North. I should have been excited. Instead, I woke up the night before with a cold sweat and a strange feeling of being watched. At 3:03 a.m., my phone vibrated on the nightstand. I assumed it was Emily, maybe confirming our plans or just sending another one of her oddly timed memes. Still groggy, I reached for the screen and froze. The message had no text, just a photo. It was of me sleeping, my head tilted toward the window, one arm over the blanket, eyes shut. But the angle was all wrong. It was taken from inside the room, from the foot of my bed. My apartment door was locked. My windows don't open. And I live alone, 32 stories up. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I turned, every light on, checked the closets under the bed, even the tiny storage space behind the washer and dryer. Nothing. No signs of forced entry. No hidden cameras. The hallway security footage. Not accessible unless you're building management. I even called the front desk pretending I lost my key card to see if anyone had requested a copy using my name. Nothing. Just silence. And that damn photo still open on my phone like a loaded gun I didn't know how to disarm. By sunrise, I convinced myself it had to be some kind of prank. Deepfake, maybe. A really well done one. Or maybe Emily was some kind of tech-savvy weirdo, with access to my Instagram or something. Maybe I posted a picture of my room and forgot, but as I scrolled through my socials, there was nothing even close. I had never shown anyone the inside of my apartment, let alone that angle. I drafted a message to her, something casual. Hey, weird photo last night, all good? But I never sent it. Something about it felt wrong. Like the moment I acknowledged it, things would get worse. I went to work like a zombie that day. Every reflection caught my eye. Every creak in the office made my skin crawl. I must have checked my phone 100 times, waiting for another message from Emily. Some kind of explanation, or at least acknowledgement. But she didn't text. Not once. It was like she'd vanished. That night, I kept every light in the apartment on again. I even dragged a chair in front of the door and wedged it under the handle like I was in some motel from a bad horror movie. It made me feel stupid, but also safe. Safer. At 2:47 a.m., just when I was starting to drift off on the couch, I heard something. Not loud, just a soft scrape, like someone dragging a fingertip across glass. I sat bolt upright. The windows. My entire living room wall was glass, floor to ceiling, overlooking the city. I stood up slowly, the sound gone now, and stared out over the skyline. Nothing but the orange glow of streetlights and the distant rumble of traffic. Then, from behind me, my phone buzzed. This time, the message had no image, just text. 4 words. Why did you move? I didn't reply. I couldn't. My mouth went dry, and I felt something I hadn't felt since I was a kid. Pure, paralyzing, fear. I turned in a slow circle, scanning every inch of the apartment. Still nothing. No one. But I knew then, I wasn't alone. I couldn't explain it, but something in the air had changed. It was heavier, charged, like the moment right before a thunderstorm, only worse. Colder. I backed into the kitchen and grabbed the biggest knife I had. My hands were shaking so hard I nearly dropped it. I wanted to leave, run to the elevator, call someone, anyone, but part of me was afraid to open the door. As if whatever was watching me wasn't inside, but just waiting to be let in. I stood there for what felt like hours, staring at the front door. At 3:03 a.m. exactly, my phone buzzed again. Another photo. This one was darker, grainier. It showed my kitchen, me standing there holding the knife. That was the moment I knew I couldn't stay. I didn't care how irrational it seemed. I grabbed my coat, phone, and keys and bolted. I didn't even lock the door behind me. The hallway was empty, eerily quiet for a Friday night. The elevator took forever, each second a lifetime. When it finally opened, I half expected someone, or something, to be waiting inside. But it was empty. I stepped in, hit the lobby button, and stared at the mirrored wall, trying not to look at my own reflection too long. When I reached the ground floor, the doorman gave me a strange look. Not suspicious, just concerned. I didn't stop to explain. I just walked out into the cold night and kept walking. Around the block, then another. My phone buzzed again. I almost didn't look, but curiosity won. Another message. You left the knife on the counter. I stopped in my tracks. No one should have known that. No one could have known that unless they were still in my apartment. I went straight to a friend's place across town. Slept on their couch with the lights on, phone turned off. I didn't tell them the real reason I showed up in the middle of the night. I just said I needed a place to crash. The next morning I mustered the courage to go back. The door to my apartment was closed, still unlocked. Inside, nothing was out of place. The knife was right where I left it. No signs of intrusion, no messages. Just silence, like it had all been some kind of fever dream. But I knew better. I haven't heard from Emily since. Her dating profile vanished the same night. No phone number, no last name. Like she never existed. But every night at exactly 3:03 a.m. I wake up. No sound, no vibration, just awake. I lie there in the dark, too afraid to check my phone, too afraid to move. And the worst part? Every morning, no matter how many times I lock the door, it's always just slightly ajar. Story 2. I always thought Central Park was the safest place I could escape to in this city. Wide open, full of people, familiar. But now, I can't even walk past the south entrance without my stomach turning. It started last Sunday, a lazy, gray-skied afternoon. I was curled up on my couch, half watching some documentary with a glass of wine when my phone buzzed. It was a message from Liam, the guy I'd been chatting with for the past few weeks. Witty, well-read, lived somewhere downtown, or so he'd said. I liked him. He seemed real. But the photo he sent made my blood run cold. It was me, asleep on a bench near the Bethesda fountain. My coat slightly open, arms crossed, head resting awkwardly on my purse. I recognized the moment. I'd dozed off during my lunch break that very afternoon. At first I thought maybe it was some weird coincidence. Maybe he'd seen someone who looked like me and sent it as a joke. But the coat in the picture was mine. So was the purse. And the bracelet barely peeking from under my sleeve. My mom gave it to me when I turned 18. My heart pounded as I zoomed in, noticing the faint smudge of lipstick on my coffee cup sitting beside me. It was me, no doubt. I stared at the screen, trying to find a caption, a context, anything. But there was nothing, just the image. I replied with a shaky, "Where did you get this?" But the message sat on read for hours. No answer. That entire evening I felt a tightness in my chest. I walked to each window, closed every curtain, checked the locks twice. I told myself it didn't mean anything. Maybe he was just nearby and saw me. Maybe he got lucky. But deep down I knew. I never told him where I worked. I never mentioned my lunch breaks in the park. The next morning, I barely slept. Every creak in my apartment made me flinch. I left early for work, eyes darting between reflections in windows and the backs of strangers' heads. At the office, I scrolled through our entire message history. Pages of flirty banter, shared music, stories about childhood. But nothing. I'd said revealed my job, my building, or my routine. I was careful about that. Paranoid even. So how did he know? I didn't go to the park that day. Instead, I ate lunch in the supply closet, door cracked open just enough to hear footsteps. My phone buzzed again around 1:23 p.m. Another message from Liam. This time, no photo, just 4 words. "You look tired today." My breath caught in my throat. I hadn't told a soul where I was. No one saw me sneak in. I double-checked the door. Locked. Lights off. I stared at the text, fingers trembling above the screen. He was watching me. Somewhere. Close. I told my manager I felt sick and left early, keeping my head low as I walked the crowded streets. Every face looked unfamiliar. Every window felt like a lens pointed at me. Back in my apartment, I locked the door and shoved a chair under the knob like that would actually stop anything. I didn't turn on the lights. I just sat in the dark with my phone in my hand, waiting, hoping he wouldn't message again, hoping he would. Hours passed. Nothing. I started to think maybe I was being dramatic, that maybe he'd just guessed. People overshare all the time online, right? I probably slipped up without realizing. But just before midnight, my phone lit up again. No name this time, just an unknown number and a single image. My front door, from the hallway, taken at eye level, taken recently. The timestamp showed 11:42 p.m. I didn't move and I couldn't. I just stared at the photo, then slowly turned toward the door, afraid I'd see a shadow under it. I didn't sleep. I sat with my back against the farthest wall from the door, kitchen knife clutched so tightly in my hand. It left red grooves in my skin. I didn't call the police, I don't know why. Maybe I was afraid they wouldn't believe me, or worse, that he wanted me to call, that it was part of some twisted game. Around 4 a.m., I finally stood up to check. The peephole. The hallway was empty, silent, still. But I noticed something that hadn't been there before. A small piece of masking tape over the keyhole, like someone had tried to cover it or peek through it. I peeled it off with shaking fingers and backed away. I needed to get out, to go somewhere, anywhere, but I was scared to even open the door. My phone buzzed again. Another photo. This time, it was from inside my apartment. A close-up of my bathroom mirror, fogged with moisture. 4. Words were drawn into the condensation with a fingertip. "You left it open." I dropped the phone. My ears were ringing. I hadn't showered. I hadn't touched that mirror in days. And my bathroom door had been closed all night. I packed a bag in under 3 minutes, grabbed my keys, and left without looking back. I didn't even lock the door. I didn't care. I stayed at a friend's place in Brooklyn that night, barely speaking, barely blinking. I never heard from Liam again. His profile disappeared. His number stopped working. It was like he never existed, except for the photos, still sitting on my phone like bruises I couldn't erase. Changed my number. Moved apartments 2 months later. I still haven't gone back to Central Park. Sometimes I wonder if it was over, or if he's just waiting, watching. I still get that feeling when I pass by dark windows or see someone holding up their phone for just a second too long, like I'm being watched again, from just beyond the edges of what I can see. So if you're reading this and someone online starts asking about where you work, where you eat, where you rest your eyes when no one's looking, don't answer. And if they send you a picture of yourself, one you never posed for, don't. Look at it alone. Story 3. I used to park up near the Hollywood sign when I couldn't sleep. Something about the view, the empty hills stretching out behind the chaos of the city, gave me a weird kind of peace. It became a habit during my second year at UCLA. I'd take my beat-up Toyota for a drive after midnight, let my thoughts simmer in silence, and just breathe up there. I never saw another soul that late. Until now, I kind of wish I had. My name's Josh. I'm 21, majoring in film production, living in a shoebox apartment a block off Hollywood Boulevard. Between classes, part-time work at a movie memorabilia store, and an editing internship, life's been a haze of deadlines and cheap coffee. A few weeks ago, I started talking to someone online, Claire. She was smart, quick with sarcasm, and somehow made me forget how lonely I actually was. Our chats were the best part of my day, but last night, that changed. We'd been messaging, back and forth until around 1 a.m. Nothing flirty that night, just the usual memes, late-night thoughts, and her asking about the places I liked to go when I couldn't sleep. I mentioned the Hollywood sign. She asked if I'd ever fallen asleep there. I laughed and said, once or twice. Then she stopped replying. I figured she'd dozed off. The next morning, I woke up to a photo from her. No caption at first, just an image. I stared at it, confused. It was me, slumped in the driver's seat of my car, head tilted awkwardly against the window. It was dark, the overhead glow of the streetlight barely lighting my face. But what got me wasn't the photo itself, it was the angle. It had been taken from outside the car, from the front, like someone standing right there, watching me. A second message came in right after the photo. Just 4 words. You look so peaceful. My stomach dropped. I read it again and again. Peaceful? I didn't even remember falling asleep. I must have dozed off for a few minutes before driving home. But someone had been there, close enough to take that picture. I asked Claire if she'd taken it. No reply. Just the scene checkmark. I tried brushing it off. Maybe she was playing a joke. Maybe she knew someone in the area. Maybe it was some weird AI filter trick. People do that now, right? Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The way my body was positioned in the photo. I don't sleep like that. And my window, it had been open. Just a crack, enough for someone to whisper through. That night I didn't go out. I stayed in, door locked, blinds shut, lights off. I kept checking my phone, waiting for Claire to respond, but nothing. I even scrolled back through our chat, history, trying to find some clue I might have missed. Something weird stood out. Her photos. All the ones she'd sent before, and none of them had her face. Just shots of coffee cups, books, streets at night. I hadn't noticed until now. Around 2:17 a.m., she finally texted back. You looked even better. Up close. That was it, no emoji, no context, just that. I didn't reply, couldn't. I just stared at the screen, heart hammering. Then I noticed something worse. The timestamp on the photo from last night. It wasn't taken at 1:30 a.m. like I'd thought. It was marked 3:42 a.m. But I'd already been home by then. I didn't sleep after that. I kept replaying everything in my head, trying to make sense of it. I thought maybe someone had followed. Home. I even checked the app where I met Claire, but her profile was gone. Like completely erased. No history, no chat log, nothing. If not for the saved images on my phone, I would have questioned if she'd ever existed at all. Around 4 a.m., I heard a knock on my apartment window. I live on the 3rd floor. It was soft, deliberate, like knuckles on glass. I froze. I didn't check. Couldn't. A part of me wanted to believe I imagined it, that it was just the wind or some creak in the building. But then I heard it again. 2 slow knocks, followed by the faint sound of someone whispering my name. Not yelling, whispering. When the sun came up, I finally worked up the nerve to check the window. Nothing. No marks, no sign anyone had been there. I packed a bag and left for the day, crashed on a friend's couch across town. I didn't tell him why. How do you explain something like that? When I got home the next evening, my apartment looked untouched. But my phone buzzed the second I walked in. It was another photo. Me again. This time, asleep in my bed. The angle was from above, like from the ceiling. My phone was face up on my nightstand in the shot, showing the time, 3:42 a.m. Same as before. The message underneath was simple. This time, you didn't wake up. I've barely slept since. I don't know who Claire really was. I don't even know if Claire was ever real. But if you've ever driven up near the Hollywood sign at night, lock your doors. And whatever you do, don't fall asleep. Story 4. I used to love living alone. My apartment in Georgetown is small, but it has that old-world charm. Crown moldings, creaky wooden floors, and those tall windows that let the morning light spill in like warm honey. I felt safe there. It was my little cocoon from the noise of the city. But now, every time I close the bathroom door, I glance at the tub and feel my stomach twist. Because I know someone was there, watching me, and I didn't even notice. I met Ethan through a mutual friend at a gallery opening. He was the kind of guy that made you forget your doubts. Warm eyes, quick wit, that subtle confidence that didn't try too hard. We texted for a week. Nothing intense, just casual, easy conversation. It felt refreshing, normal. We set a time to meet for coffee on M Street, nothing fancy. But that morning, just a few hours before we were supposed to meet, he sent me a picture. No message, just an image. And when I opened it, my breath caught in my throat. It was me, asleep in my bathtub, candles burning low beside me. The photo was taken from inside my apartment. I didn't even remember falling asleep in the tub. It had been a long, stressful day, and I often unwind with a glass of wine and a soak. But that night, I vaguely recalled lighting candles, playing soft music. Nothing else. No dreams. Just darkness. And yet, in the photo, I'm clearly unconscious. Head tilted to the side, my hair wet and clinging to my face. The angle of the shot suggested someone had been standing just inside the bathroom door. The sheer intimacy of it made my skin crawl. I bolted out of bed, heart pounding, and checked every corner of my apartment. It was exactly how I'd left it, except for one thing. On the tile floor beside the bath mat was a single wet footprint. Not mine. Too large, too long. And facing the tub, I stood frozen, towel clutched against my chest, staring at it like it would suddenly vanish. But it didn't. It stayed there, mocking me with the silent confirmation that someone had been inside, that someone had watched me sleep. I called the police, of course. They came, took a quick look, asked the usual questions. No signs of forced entry. Nothing stolen. One of the officers suggested I might have invited someone over and just forgotten. The way he looked at me, like I was wasting his time, made my face burn with shame. I showed them the photo Ethan sent, but by then it had vanished from the thread. Deleted. I tried scrolling back, tried showing them the timestamp, but it was just gone, like it had never been sent. I texted Ethan. No reply. I called, straight, to voicemail. His social media accounts were suddenly deactivated, or maybe blocked. I wasn't sure which. I even reached out to our mutual friend, the one from the gallery. Ethan who? She said, like she'd never introduced us. I laughed at first, thinking she was messing with me. But she kept insisting, said she didn't remember anyone named Ethan that night. I scrolled back through my phone, looking. For our first text, the entire thread was missing. I stopped sleeping. For the first few nights, I sat up with the lights on, listening. Every creak in the floorboards, every gust of wind against the window, sent adrenaline rushing through me. I bought a door camera and installed it immediately, even though the building's old wiring made the connection unreliable. I changed my locks. Twice. But still, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone had already been inside, that they knew the space better than I did, that they were waiting for me to forget just once to lock a window. Then came the second photo. This time it arrived in my email, from a burner address with no subject line. It showed me standing in front of my fridge, reaching for a bottle of juice. I remember that exact moment because I was still in my pajamas, hair a mess, no makeup, thinking about nothing at all. The photo was taken from the hallway, through the crack of the slightly ajar kitchen door. My hand was mid-motion. The timestamp was from that same morning, and I had no idea anyone was there. I went to stay at a friend's place after that. She thought I was overreacting, but she let me crash on her couch anyway. For a while, I felt safer. No strange emails, no vanishing messages. I tried convincing myself it had all been a weird, elaborate prank. Maybe I'd sleepwalked, taken that tub photo myself. Maybe Ethan was never real, just someone messing with me for reasons I couldn't grasp. But then, on my third night away, I got a voicemail. Just static at first. Then the sound of water dripping. Then my own voice, faint, half asleep. Ethan. And then a click. I went back to my apartment the next day with my friend in tow. Everything looked untouched, except for the mirror in the bathroom. Someone had written a message in the steam, the kind that only shows up when the air turns warm and wet. I hadn't run the shower, but the message was there, bold, and freshly smudged. You look peaceful when you sleep. My friend saw it. 2. We stood there together, silent, the weight of the moment crushing the air between us. She didn't say I was imagining it this time. I moved out 2 days later, packed in a frenzy, left behind furniture, even clothes. I just wanted out. I changed my number, deleted my social media, blocked every email that looked remotely suspicious. I'm in a sublet now. Nothing special, just 4 plain walls and a deadbolt I check at least 10 times before bed. I haven't heard from Ethan again. No more photos, no more messages. But I still wake up some nights convinced I heard a click from the hallway, or the soft echo of water dripping in the dark. I used to love candles. I haven't lit one since. And sometimes, like last night, I'll catch my reflection in the mirror and feel this cold certainty wash over me, that the version of me staring back isn't alone, that someone else is just behind the glass, watching, waiting. I don't know who he was. I don't know what he wanted. But if you've met someone recently, someone charming who seems to know just a little too much about you, don't meet them for coffee. Check your locks, and whatever you do, don't fall asleep in the tub. Story 5. I used to sleep like a rock, deep, dreamless, and without a care in the world, until last week. Now, I lie awake most nights, listening for footsteps. In the sand, the soft hiss of waves or the sound of a breath that isn't mine. I haven't told anyone. What would I even say? That a girl I met online sent me a photo of myself sleeping, and she wasn't supposed to be anywhere near me. It started pretty normal. I'm a fitness coach, work out by the beach, train clients along the pier. I met Hannah online. She was into hiking, healthy eating, the usual, and we messaged for months before setting a date to meet. She always seemed a little shy about video calls, said her camera didn't work, so I didn't push. She knew a lot. About Santa Monica, though, more than I ever mentioned. At first I thought she just Googled stuff, but then came the picture. It came late, 2:17 a.m. I'd passed out on the beach after a long day of back-to-back sessions. It's not unusual for me to crash near the pier. The sound of the ocean helps me unwind. But the photo she sent, it was taken from just a few feet away. I was lying there, mouth slightly open, hoodie pulled over my face, and behind me, the moonlit waves curled into the shore. The angle wasn't casual, it was close, personal. Someone had to kneel right next to me to take it. I stared at it for a while, unsure if I was dreaming. Then a second message appeared, just 2 words. I almost woke you. My stomach dropped. I sat up so fast I felt dizzy. The beach was empty by then. Nothing but dark shapes and streetlights off in the distance. I looked around like a lunatic, scanning the shadows, the lifeguard towers, the walkway behind the pier. Nothing. No footsteps in the sand. No signs of anyone. But I couldn't shake the feeling that someone had been watching me sleep. The next day, I didn't mention it to anyone. I figured maybe it was some sick prank, or maybe Hannah had found an old picture I didn't remember posting. But I checked all my socials, every photo I'd ever uploaded. Nothing matched. The angle, the lighting, it had to be recent. That night, I stayed inside, locked my doors, pulled the blinds shut, and kept my phone on silent. I told myself I was overreacting, but when I checked her profile again, it was gone, deleted. No trace of her, like she'd never existed. I didn't sleep. Around 3 a.m., I thought I heard someone outside my apartment window. Just a soft, rhythmic scraping, like fingernails brushing glass. I froze. My place is on the 2nd floor. There's no balcony. I waited, heart pounding, until the noise stopped. When I finally had the courage to look, there was nothing there. But the next morning, I noticed something that made my skin crawl. On the window, just above eye level, were 3 faint smudges, like the prints of someone's forehead, and fingers. I told myself they could have been mine. Maybe I leaned against the glass without realizing, but deep down, I knew that wasn't true. The placement was wrong, too high unless I stood on something, and I hadn't. That day, I skipped work. I couldn't focus, couldn't stop checking over my shoulder. Every reflection became suspicious. I kept thinking about the way she'd said it. I almost woke you, like it was a game, like she'd been close enough to touch me and just didn't. Later that night, I went back to the pier. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted to prove something to myself, or maybe I just needed to face whatever the hell this was. The beach was mostly empty, just a couple people walking dogs, the usual flicker of traffic above on Ocean Avenue. I sat in the same spot I had in the photo. For a while, nothing happened. But around midnight, I saw a figure near the waterline, not moving, just standing there, facing me. I stood up, squinting, trying to make out who it was. Woman, I think. Long hair, barefoot. Just far enough that I couldn't see her face, but I felt her eyes locked on me. I took a step forward. She didn't move. Took another. Still nothing. I opened my mouth to call out, but the words caught in my throat. Something felt wrong. Off. The tide rolled in behind her, soaking the hem of her jeans. But she didn't flinch. Didn't shift. Just stared. When I finally worked up the nerve to move closer, a wave surged up high and sudden, crashing between us. I stumbled back, shielding my face from the spray. And when I looked again, she was gone. Just gone. No footprints, no sign she'd ever been there. I scanned the beach in every direction, heart thudding, panic rising. Then my phone buzzed in. My pocket. A new message. No name, no number. Just, you looked different up close. I left the beach without looking back. Drove home with every mirror covered, every light on. I checked the locks 3 times, then pushed a chair under the doorknob. For good measure, I didn't sleep. Around 4 a.m., my phone buzzed again. A photo this time, my bedroom window, taken from outside. Curtains drawn, but a faint silhouette visible. Me, standing inside, looking out. Only I wasn't. I'd been in bed. I hadn't moved since locking myself in. I moved out 2 days later, left the coast, changed my number. I haven't heard from Hannah since, but sometimes late at night I still feel it. That watching, that weight behind the eyes you can't see. Keep all my windows covered now. Never sleep near them. And if you ever wake up to find a photo of yourself sleeping, ask yourself one thing. Who was close enough to take it? Story 6. I used to love the quiet hum of the market after closing, the way the neon signs reflected off wet pavement, the distant sound of ferries in Elliott Bay. I'd stay late sometimes, reorganizing displays or just soaking in the calm, especially in winter when Pike Place seemed to exhale after the crowds vanished. I own a little stall that sells handmade ceramics, tucked between a florist and a spice vendor. People know me as Ben, the guy with the messy apron and coffee-stained fingers. Everything felt safe, familiar. Until Chloe. We'd been talking for 5 months. I never saw her face, just text messages and the occasional voice note, always a little distorted, like she was calling from the bottom of a tunnel. But she knew things, personal things. What music I played while glazing mugs. That I sometimes fell asleep behind the counter after long days. I thought it was sweet. Maybe she'd visited the stall, watched me from a distance. Maybe she was shy. That's what I told myself, right up until last night when she sent me a photo I never took. I was sleeping, head on the counter, market closed. The timestamp, 3:12 a.m. At first, I stared at the image, trying to convince myself it was old. Maybe I had dozed off during inventory a few weeks ago and just forgot. But everything in the picture was too specific. The stack of cobalt blue mugs I'd only finished glazing yesterday, the new shipment box I hadn't even opened yet sitting in the corner. It was from last night. There was no denying it. My phone buzzed again while I was still staring. Just a message this time. Can't wait to finally see you tomorrow. You look so peaceful when you sleep. My first instinct was to call someone. The police maybe, or at least building security. But then I remembered, only vendors have access after hours, and I always double lock my stall before leaving. My keys never leave my apartment. I keep them in a small lockbox under the sink, one only I know the code to. unless someone was lying about who they were, or unless Chloe wasn't just watching. She'd been here, inside, inches from me while I slept, and somehow I never even stirred. I didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying the image in my head, scanning every corner of it for a shadow, a reflection, anything that might reveal who took it. But there was nothing. Just me hunched over the counter, lights dimmed, surrounded by silence. In the morning, I drove straight to the stall. Everything looked untouched. No signs of forced entry, nothing missing. The box was still sealed. But when I unlocked the cabinet under the counter, my backup key, the one I'd hidden in a ceramic sugar jar months ago, was gone. I wanted to cancel the date. God, I should have. But something in me needed to know who she was. I told myself I could control the situation, meet in public, keep things safe. So I texted her back, pretending nothing was wrong. Still on for a year. Tonight? Her reply came instantly. Of course, I've been waiting so long. She picked a little cafe near the waterfront. 7 p.m. I spent the whole day trying to remember if I'd ever seen her in the crowd. Someone hovering too long, watching from just outside my periphery, but no face ever came to mind. Just this presence I'd let into my life, one message at a time. The cafe was warm and loud, the kind of place where no one notices if your hands shake while holding a cup. I got there early, picked a table by the window, made sure my back was to the wall. I kept scanning faces, looking for someone watching me instead of their drink. Every time the door opened, I flinched. At 7:03, my phone buzzed. A message. You look different without the apron. I jerked my head up. No one was near me. No one was looking. I replied, "Where are you?" and got nothing back. Minutes dragged. At 7:20, I left, heart pounding, skin cold despite my jacket. I walked fast, constantly checking over my shoulder. Pike Place is different at night, emptier, the echo of footsteps lasting too long. My car was parked in the vendor lot behind the market. When I turned the corner, I stopped. The side entrance gate, normally locked after 6 p.m., was wide open. And beyond it, down the narrow corridor between stalls, I saw my booth light flicker on. Just once, like someone was reminding me it was still there, waiting. I should have walked away, gotten in my car, driven until the city disappeared in the rear view. But instead, I stepped through the open gate. My breath clouded in the air. The market silent except for the occasional creak of metal and distant dripping water. I moved slowly, my boots echoing on the concrete. As I neared my stall, I could feel it. That sensation you get when someone's watching. I stopped just short of the counter. The door to the stall was ajar, just slightly, enough to see a sliver of darkness inside. "Chloe," I called out, instantly regretting it. My voice sounded too loud, too alone. No answer. I reached out and pushed the door fully open. My heart stopped. Everything looked exactly like it had in the photo. The mugs, the sealed box, the exact positioning of the stool. Except now, taped to the inside of the glass display case, was a new photo. Me, taken from behind, standing exactly where I was at that moment. I spun around, but the corridor was empty. I didn't hear the shutter. I didn't hear anything. I grabbed the photo and stumbled back, my hands slick with sweat. Somewhere above me, I heard a soft creak, like weight shifting on old floorboards. But there were no upper floors. In that section of the market, I backed out of the stall, not daring to turn my back fully. That's when I saw it. On the wall just outside my booth. Dozens of photos, all of me, sleeping, working, talking to customers. Some I recognized from days I thought I'd been alone. Others, I had no memory of at all. I haven't gone back since. I told the landlord I was done. Left everything behind, mugs, tools, even my wallet. Every night now I check all the locks in my apartment. Twice, 3 times. And still, sometimes around 3:12 a.m., my phone buzzes. No name, no number, just a message. Last night said, "You look peaceful again. Should I knock this time? If you're reading this, tell me, would you answer the door?"